I'm going to call this meeting to order. The Canby Planning Commission, today, Monday, April 14th, 2014. It is 7 o'clock. Our first item of business is open to citizen input on non-agenda items. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to give input on non-agenda items? Not seeing any. We have two sets of minutes for consideration. We have the minutes from February 10th, 2014 first. Is there any comment on these minutes? Seeing any? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of February 10th. Do you want them both at the same time?
No, each.
February 10th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion about that? Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the February 10th, 2014 minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next, we have consideration of the minutes of the February 24th, 2014 Planning Commission meeting. Is there any discussion about these minutes?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of February 24th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion about approval as is? Not seeing any discussion. All those in favor of approving the minutes of the February 24th, 2014 meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, and I was an aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? All were in favor. Thank you. On to new business. Today we do have a public hearing as our first item of new business. This is DR 1401. The applicant is proposing to construct a 34,205 foot speculative lease building and parking lot at the Trend Business Center. So I will read our quasi-judicial public hearing procedure now. The matter that's going to be coming before the hearing body requires a public hearing. All interested persons in attendance shall be heard on the matter. If you wish to testify on this matter, please be prepared to step forward to the microphone at the appropriate time, state your name and interest in the matter. Please be sure to sign in at the testimony sheet, which is located on the pedestal by the front door. For those other than the applicants that are interested in testifying as either proponents or opponents, please indicate your desire to speak by raising your hands at this time. If everybody's signed in, if there's any problems, you can talk to Laney. For longer presentations, proponents and opponents may buy time from one another. In so doing, those either in favor or opposed may allocate their time to a spokesperson who will represent the entire group. You may be limited by time for your presentation. Generally, the applicant will have a total of 15 minutes to speak. The proponents will be given 5 minutes each. The opponents will be given 5 minutes each. And those thought to be neutral on the matter will be given 5 minutes each. The applicant will then have 10 minutes for rebuttal. Not seeing too many people here today to talk about this. Well, let's try and keep it to those 15 minutes for the proponents. All questions must be directed through the chair. Any evidence to be considered must be submitted to the hearing body for public access and to become part of the record. All written testimony received both for and against prior to the hearing shall be summarized by staff and briefly presented briefly to the hearing body during the staff report. Testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable review criteria contained as indicated in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the applicable land use regulations which the person believes to apply to the decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the decision maker and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue may preclude appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the local government to respond to the issue may preclude an action for damages in circuit court. Everyone present is encouraged to testify, even if it's only to concur with previous testimony. The order in which things will take place: first we will ask about conflicts of interest, then ex parte contacts, then we will have the staff report. Next, we will open it up for questions from the planning commissioners to the staff. Next, we will open up the public hearing. The applicant will have 15 minutes. Any other proponents will have 5 minutes each. Opponents will have not more than 5 minutes each. Anyone that's neutral will then be given a chance to speak for 5 minutes, and the applicant will have a final rebuttal of not more than 10 minutes. We'll close public testimony, then we will ask questions to staff or any other questions the planning commission may have, then we'll discuss and deliberate on the decision. So at this time, I would ask, is there any member of the planning commission who has a conflict of interest? If so, please indicate the nature and extent of the conflict, and then whether you intend to participate or abstain from the hearing in the present matter. Is there any conflicts of interest?
No.
Not hearing any conflicts of interest. With respect to ex parte contacts, is there any member of the planning commission that has an ex parte contact with anyone prior to this hearing, including a visit to the site? Please declare the nature and extent of such contact at this time.
No.
Not saying any. Does any member of the audience have any objection to conflicts of interest or ex parte contacts? Doesn't seem. Thank you. We will next move to the staff report. Angie or Brian?
Be me tonight. Okay, so the proposal is actually a little bit higher square footage building. It's about 250 square feet on this 2.44 acre tax lot along 341 South Sequoia, this tax lot. The proposed building will be leased. The building can be divided into 3 separate tenant spaces or have all occupied by one tenant. Tenant's proposed use will be verified if it's permitted in the M2 in the industrial overlay zone prior to obtaining a business license. And the owner is Trend Business Center. Applicant is BLMK Engineers. So I'll just go over some of the major topics from the staff report and run through the conditions of approval if you'd like, and then, as always, feel free to ask questions as I go along. The traffic study, let's see, 2008 traffic study was submitted. No issues or mitigations were recommended in the study. No conflicts with the TSP were found. Although the current TSP was adopted in 2010, and the study was conducted in 2008, but that should not be an issue since there's no street improvements proposed. And the on-site circulation wasn't evaluated in the study because this is not a retail area for public. It's more of it's not a commercial shopping center or anything like that. So we're less concerned about on-site circulation and let that be up to the applicant if it works for them or not. Let's see, driveway width. There's a code, Public Works conflict, so we're proposing that the 40-foot standard in the code be allowed. The Public Works says 36. They're proposing 2 joint use driveways along Sequoia here. They're 40 feet. Walkways, the code requires walkways from the public sidewalk to the primary ground floor entrance. So that's what this is right here. And there's an entrance at the front and there's 2 at the side. If somebody was walking along here, they'd have to cross the loading deck. But otherwise, it's that's what these walkways are for on-site pedestrian circulation. If you turn to page 22 of your packet, I'll try to go over the review matrix with you, which staff struggled with applying. Just so you know, next meeting we're proposing several edits to this, but right now, since this is the current code, this is what we're using. I don't know if for the people in the audience, I don't think you have the planning commission packet, but approximately page 10. So several sections staff determined to be non-applicable, or staff kind of altered the points accordingly to what the maximum number of points necessary to meet the tables were. Stuff like on tree retention, that wouldn't be applicable. There's no existing trees. Street alignments, there's no streets proposed, that kind of a thing. So had to kind of play around with those tables a little bit. The transportation circulation section on page 22. Struggled with this, the design of all pedestrian ways, to get points for that. So here's a cross-section of the walkways along the entrances. It says that it should be raised and 6 feet or wider to get 2 points. So it has a 6-inch curb and it's 6 feet 6 inches. So that's how they got points for that. I'm not sure. I don't think this part is raised. Some places have like a little, kind of like in front of Waite Park, there's a little raised pedestrian crossing there. I think that's what this section in the matrix is aiming for, but 2 points were assigned. The landscaping section, see, a bench is being provided here to get at the public sidewalk walkway connection area to get the public amenities points. And just so you know, this is something we're probably going to propose for edits, but this grass covering, 100% grass covering standard, I mean, that's, the landscape plan shows 100% ground covering, grass coverage, but realize there is going to be some mulch. 100% landscape coverage is probably not feasible, so, but that's what that section is saying, we think. The building appearance section, this is something, again, it's pretty discretionary. See, buildings should use quality materials. Concrete, I guess under strict interpretation, would not receive points. They're proposing tilt-up walls. This section's aiming more for brick or higher quality materials. There's concrete masonry, but this is the proposed facade, so staff assigned 2 points so they could pass that point of the table, but it's something that the Planning Commission just can ask if they want, or ask questions. On the building materials, okay, so next topic is the parking and landscaping calculations, which is something, how to calculate these is something that staff struggled with. Tried to explain how we did it in the report, but there's this, so building D's landscaping, and building D is the existing building to the east, and building C is this blue area. Can't see it the bulb very well, but this is the tax lot we're building on now, and this is the adjacent tax lot. And then the adjacent building kind of built on 2 tax lots and a portion of this one. So,
And your question for you real quick. Are those, that, I would assume on a building like this, those are separate walls. How much room are they leaving in between there? Do you,
there's a separate, I'm sorry?
well, there's, how close are those things together?
The two buildings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Right
know
over a couple feet
exactly.
or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would meet setbacks, and
Reed?
Okay.
it's this is the building here, and this is the building
No.
here.
Are you
okay.
talking about right there?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that would be like the,
That's
this is what I'm calling the construction line. So they're not actually
That's the building
constructing.
there, okay,
Yeah. So this right here already exists,
right. Okay.
so. So I think I would have preferred, or staff would have preferred, just to have the calculations based on this construction area, and then like D's calculations were based on this area, overlapping on 2 tax lots, but they were submitted as all the parking and landscaping was based on tax lot, so that's what we went with. And the overall 15% landscaping is met for both. The parking lot landscaping, which is kind of a subset of the parking, of the overall 15%, I know it's met for C. I can't guarantee it's still going to be met for D, but, and they are going to be taking out some landscaping from D. There's this plan I found from 2008, building D's landscaping, and it has a row basically separating the 2 sites. So some of that's going to be removed for this project. I think parking is met for the highest possible use, which would be 1.5 spaces per 1,000 square feet. That's met for building C and west of this line here. No, for the tax lot line. Building D would be has a little bit less parking, and I'm not sure what use they're using now, but if you go with the second highest parking requirement for 1 space per 1,000 square feet, then it's met over here for D as well. What I was just, when reviewing this, is trying not to have this little area be double counted. So, I think everything's fine, except I'm not sure about that parking lot landscaping subset, but was a little confusing, and
Did you do the calculation if you considered them both together? If you consider them all based on the square footage, would it meet the standard in total?
No. It's just so many ways to calculate it, I guess.
we kinda
you
did
could-
that.
Say, no, you didn't do that
No.
one,
Yeah,
so we don't know.
but we did do overall landscaping for
Overall
the 2
land-
sites, and they met that. But the trouble is, our landscaping code is difficult enough that you've got the overall percentage, which they do have as a whole, both sites. But the individual landscaping that's supposed to be within 10 feet of the parking area was a little harder to get to without them providing those calculations. We
So-
don't have the ability to measure it.
We just left it at that for now. If you guys want to ask for something further, we're going to leave that up to you guys. And in the strictest interpretation, if you're removing landscaping from an existing site, like, which we think's proposed for some of this, there's this modification process that we have. We're not, since they're showing it here tonight, we're not proposing that they do that, but we're just letting you know that some existing landscaping will be removed. let's see, a couple of other miscellaneous landscaping items, which we can't see very well on the slide here, but these little landscaping islands are required every 8 spaces in the parking lot. So that's met, except this area has 9 spaces. And then also our code has a provision about all the areas being 6 feet in width. Some of them I couldn't quite tell if they're 6 feet. Couldn't, pretty close, but I couldn't tell for sure. There's a provision that talks about shielding of headlights on the perimeter to the streets within 3 years. Propose a condition that the bushes and the shrubs should be maintained in a manner that grow to a height and density to try to shield vehicle headlights, but I mean, that's kind of something that's kind of hard to really enforce and picture what that's going to look like in 3 years, but the conditions there, if someone should have a question about that in 3 years.
Question on that, Eddie. If my memory serves me right, I don't recall any of the industrial buildings out there having plants surrounding them from the streets big enough to block headlights or in their parking lot. Am I wrong, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, I went out there and looked as well, and I don't, the landscaping code hasn't changed in the past
To my knowledge.
5 years, so I think that these codes are the same, they're just,
Yeah, our landscaping code doesn't distinguish itself from office uses that are often adjacent to residential zoning, and that's where the requirement, I'm sure historically, has come from, is that if you have an office building and across the street is this residential neighborhood, and you're aiming your parked cars across to the houses, the idea was that your shrubbery would grow and shield the lighting from that neighborhood, and trying to apply that equally in all development situations, in industrial parks and everywhere else, but that's the way the code is set up right now, is that it just has that standard and it applies equally to everywhere. That's my best assumption as to how it got in the code and why it was there and what its original purpose was probably for.
loading berths. Code says the industrial berths should be 60 foot long, 12 foot wide, 14 foot high. I couldn't really decide if that meant for the doors or the actual loading areas. I'm going to say it's for the loading areas and say that's met. They're proposing 10 loading docks, and that's kind of, these are my markups, but they're in the gray areas here. This is the building. So, and then 2 of the doors do meet those dimensions, so that might be something worth clarifying in the future. Code requires loading docks to be screened with landscaping, walls, or other means. Most of them are to the back or the side of the building. That's these gray areas here. There is one kind of at the front. It is going to be recessed a little bit, and there is some landscaping, some of this green and orange around here. So it's a discretionary thing. If you want to require more landscaping, you could. But I think the side and the back, landscaping are not readily viewable from the street. Wheel stops. The code requires parking bumpers or wheel stops to prevent cars from encroaching into streets, landscape areas, or pedestrian walkways. And the drawings do show wheel stops, but the applicant has stated to me verbally that they prefer not to have those. A curb will be adjacent to all the landscaping areas, and the walkways are raised some. But no wheel stops can result in the vehicles overhanging onto a walkway or to a landscape area. So I think that's, we didn't propose a condition of approval to have the wheel stops. That's something that the planning commission can consider if you think it's important enough. See.
The main, Angie, if I could, the main issue there is thinking about the bumpers overhanging the curb and whether they're then damaging a row of shrubs. So you have to kind of analyze to see the kind of landscape plantings that are proposed to know whether not having wheel stops to keep you from going all the way up to the curb is going to cause a potential problem. Then the other problem is when you're next to a sidewalk. If your bumper covers half the sidewalk, then you're not meeting the width requirement. And I don't know that we have that issue here, do we? There might
No,
be.
for the sidewalk?
Yeah, is there a potential width issue with bumpers overhanging the sidewalk? If we use?
I mean, it says over 6 feet is what they got points for, so I guess if you have half of your sidewalk unusable,
There might be a
then,
question about that
Yeah.
point, so.
see, bicycle parking, we're proposing that a U-style rack be installed at each entrance. The applicant has originally proposed one U-style rack at the north entrance, and we've calculated out that 5 bicycle parking spaces are required. I guess these U-style racks, this picture shows 3 bikes being parked, like 1, 2, 3, but I think realistically they are normally parked like this. So I think the U-style racks can really just hold 2. And then they also proposed 1 indoor rack to be installed at a later time. But that's something that would be hard for staff to make sure that gets installed at a later time. I mean, that's great to have an indoor rack, but as far as ensuring that it meets the bicycle standards, we think 1 U-style rack is, by each entrance, is not out of the question, so we proposed a condition for that. Rooftop equipment, there's none proposed at this time, but it could be proposed at a later time with tenant improvements. This line of sight diagram was submitted by the applicant that shows, rooftop equipment setback, and at this size wouldn't be very viewable from Sequoia or from the street. I'm not sure what it would look like from other angles, and I'm not sure what it would look like if it was bigger, but we've had the problem in the past of rooftop equipment just kind of showing up and looking like some people didn't think it was very appealing. So, if there's none proposed at this time, I don't think we can place any conditions, but it's just a topic worth bringing up, I think, if the Planning Commission would like to discuss it. But there's none proposed at this time. And then finally, the lighting, we would like some input on that. And the applicant has kind of wanted us to bump it down to a condition of approval and not having a full-scale lighting plan at this point. Specifically, this is the table from the code with lumens and shielding categories. So is there anything staff would like feedback on what types of lights and shielding types should be required, and where to condition the lighting condition 7 appropriately? Do you want shielding, shielded, unshielded? What does that look like to you? These are just some pictures that I found off the internet. This is the one that's in the code. or, you know, if don't care about the lighting at all, just some feedback, so when we're trying
I thought we established a
to.
while back that industrial was supposed to have the fully shielded. Is that not written into the code?
Well, it's supposed to be,
Is that only when
it's
it's next
supposed
to
to be one of
residential?
these categories. So if it's
Lots.
fully shielded, then the maximum lumens are supposed to be 7,800. Shielded or partially shielded, you know, gets
Okay.
less lumens. Or unshielded is really, it's not desired, so.
Okay, so those are all.
I didn't put their, they do kind of have a proposed fixture on one of their plans that I didn't get out, but if you have more questions, I'm sure they have it, or I can find where it is in the packet, but,
Okay.
and I could quickly run through the conditions if you'd like,
Let's just go to the applicant.
and
We can
there
ask
is
questions about that later.
one condition that needs to be changed, number 15. It says 4 spaces, and the applicant pointed out that there's only 3
What page are
comp.
you on?
Condition 15 is on page 32. And that's concerning about marking a compact parking space. So that needs to say 3 instead of 4. And other than that, they're pretty standard conditions, so.
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
you're welcome.
Were there any other questions for Angie before I move to the applicant? Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Please remember to state your name and your address for the record.
I don't know if this is any better than what we looked at already, but
And there's a pointer right there.
Hi, I'm Scott McCormack from McCormack Properties. I'm located at 7190 Southwest Sandberg Street in Tigard, Oregon. We own Trin Business Center. This is Haviland Kemp from BLMK Consulting Engineers. They've designed all the buildings out Trin Business Center. Just a brief summary. About 10 years ago, we bought about 10 acres out there that make up Trin Business Center. And we're here to talk about Building C, which is the 4th building we've constructed out there. Buildings A and B we constructed in 2005 and 2006. Building D, which you can see on the drawing, we constructed in 2008. All 4 buildings are right on a row along Sequoia Parkway. They all have similar features that kind of tie them together. But Building D, the one built in 2008, that's the one that's going to be very similar to Building C. We're proposing same paint color, storefront glass, same number of dock doors and drive-in doors. The one difference that was mentioned is a little bit longer, the same width, but it's a little bit longer, so it's about 10% bigger than Building D. We've always built them speculative, so we've never had a tenant as we start the process. We do have a marketing program out there with Kidder Matthews, which is our real estate brokers, and we're targeting that small, medium-sized company that needs warehouse or manufacturing space. Maybe a company inside Canby or in the surrounding areas. An example of some of the tenants is in our Building D. Our tenant is Cascade Engineering Technologies. They manufacture aerospace, parts for the aerospace industry. They're originally from Milwaukee, Oregon, and they actually still have their Milwaukee facility, but they need additional space. They're leasing Building D from us, and they've been around 20, 25 years in Milwaukee. They actually have a good projection of growth going forward, and they've actually indicated that someday soon they'll need another building, and they've indicated they'd like it to be in Canby, so that's the type of tenant we like to target. We generally like to hold the buildings and lease them out, but we do sell them occasionally. For instance, Building B, the one directly to the east, we sold to someone who actually turned around and then sold it to Pump Tech, and I know someone from the audience is here from Pump Tech. And they, from their name, they sell and manufacture pumping stations. So those are the kind of tenants that we seek out. So again, we don't have a tenant this time, but we got a marketing program, and we'll go out there and search for that company that needs warehouse or manufacturing space. So, and it was mentioned that so far we've always ended up with a single tenant for these buildings, but we do give us some flexibility to design it so we could put demising walls up, demise it for 3 tenants, or put one demising wall and have 2 tenants. But we've always ended up with a single tenant so far. guess that's a kind of summary overall. And turn it back over to you guys for questions.
One thing we certainly want to hear during your presentation is if you have any comments or opposition to any of the conditions that staff has proposed. So that's something we always are interested in.
I don't know that we have any objections to the conditions, no.
No, I mean, we're fine with the conditions stated.
Anything else?
I would just like to say that all 4 buildings have been designed and proposed under pretty much the same planning code. I don't believe there's been significant changes to the planning code. So the intent here was to make the buildings look like a cohesive industrial park and to meet the conditions set forth by Canby. So we weren't trying to do anything here to get around the code or skirt the code. Building C was always planned. It was not approved with Building D. It wasn't proposed with Building D. It was shown on the site plan with Building D. So there's been no significant changes to what we were going to do on the Building C site here in terms of common driveways, common access way, common driveways out onto Sequoia, those kind of things. So what you see for Building C has been approvable and approved with the past buildings in terms of meeting the requirements of the planning matrix and things like that.
Obviously, you guys are developing this for speculation, but you feel like the parking will be adequate for long-term use? Obviously, I think staff apparently did some recalculations on those too.
Yeah, looking at the staff report, so there's different categories, like the highest parking category was wholesale establishments, that required the most parking spaces, and C passed that. D didn't pass that, but did pass the next criteria down, which is manufacturing warehouse, which is the type of tenants we've always gotten. So even D passed the manufacturing warehouse parking requirements. So.
Okay. Any commissioners have any questions for the applicants? Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Are there any other proponents? Okay, no other proponents. Are there any opponents? Anyone here wants to speak against it? Anyone that wants to speak neutral? You can't seriously be neutral. Come on, Renata. We always want to hear from you.
So I guess a couple comments. One is that the design is very consistent with the existing Trend Business Center, and the design is intended to be flexible, which will meet market demand. The fact that it could be occupied by 1 tenant or up to 3 tenants for manufacturing and warehousing is the market that Canby is in. So we feel it's a great addition to our industrial space need, which we have very little of right now. So of course supportive of that. And the landscaping is what they're proposing is consistent with the other developments, so it makes a consistent look, which creates a high bar for our industrial park, and we like that. So the reason I didn't come as a proponent is because I'm staff, so I'm not really public, but did want to mention those 2 things that I think are important from an economic development standpoint.
Thank you. Thumbtack's here. You guys didn't have any comments? You just want to know what's going on?
I didn't have any comments. I only came for, there was a question that I had, and I think it's been answered. It had to do with the driveway proposal, because we did have some issues on the west side of our building. And I spoke with Bill in the past when he was, thinking about developing Building C, what that driveway might look like. But it appears to me from the plans that Building C and D are going to share a driveway, and it wouldn't be Building C and B, which is my building.
Actually, it would be. We're expanding that driveway, so there'll be 2 shared. There's a shared driveway between C and D, and also a shared driveway between C and B.
Okay, so that is expanded then?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Is there plans that I can get my hands on? 'Cause I guess I haven't seen those, other than this tonight.
We can give you maps
Okay,
from the public record.
all right.
Okay, no other public testimony, well then, is there any rebuttal? Do you guys want to have any rebuttal time? Okay, well then, not hearing any other public testimony, we will close the public hearing part of that, and we'll just move to questions for staff. If there's no questions for staff, we'll go just to deliberation. Anyone have any questions for staff on any of this?
I was unclear on the lighting proposal, could you run by me again, why we didn't make a specific recommendation on lighting? I mean, what is there currently?
They have a, I don't know, I don't know what their current lighting on building, any of the other buildings are.
On page, if I can jump in here.
Trying to find, there's a little drawing of what the lights are proposed to look like.
It appears that they voluntarily circled, if I'm reading this right, page 43 of 177, voluntarily circled the partially screened, which is the lower lumens requirement, or allowance, I guess is a better way to say it. And I would propose as that condition of approval, we limit them to either the partially screened with the lower lumens or the fully screened if they want the higher lumens. And take the unscreened just completely out of the picture. Is there any discussion about that?
No, I would agree with that.
You said it was on page 43?
Page 43.
Of 177.
Is that on the site details plan? No.
This is the applicants, please circle the point column you believe to your
Oh,
project.
okay.
You can-
Okay.
And so they, I guess, at least sought the one point there. And I don't have a problem either if it's fully shielded and the maximum light, or if it's partially screened in the more moderate one. But of course, the industrial park is on the outskirts of town, which is a darker area, and so controlling that to some degree would be wise.
I'm looking at page 93. There's a site lighting plan.
John, those numbers are kind of small, I'm not sure you're...
I can't see it, so.
That's actually the number.
Is that right?
That's the number.
Next time, could you make the print on that just a little bit smaller? It's just glaring, jumping right out at me. Man, can't see the jeweler's magnifying glass to see that. That is very small. Man.
So there's a little wall pack light detail on the bottom left.
Okay.
So I think, and they can either put that additional little shield,
Over. Let me get my magnifying, that's 95,
Oh, okay, so,
that thing there.
oh, okay, got it.
so I think it says additional light shield as required. So it can either just be that flat thing without a shield extending down, or if you think that the extra shield should be put in with the lights. But this is so far what they're proposing.
They do have a bubble there. I don't know if you see the bubble, and it says the construction documents to
it's
provide
not
the
that
lumens. Isn't that this one?
Oh, we don't have the construction
No,
documents.
I
though.
know, but they say that they're going to provide the actual lumens, that a medium level lighting
Is this consistent with what the other buildings have?
I wouldn't know what the other building, I think it's probably the same fixture, correct?
I know that night sky lighting was a concern in the past. I don't know that your code was written. We're agreeing to comply with whatever the code requires. If you want to say that it's the medium lighting level for partially shield, the lumens for partially shield, we're fine with that.
And, you know, if somebody wants to make a motion on that, I'm fine with either the fully shielded and super bright lumens or the partially shielded with the lower lumens. That's what our code, that's the basics for our code. Our code has the limited shielding or the hardly any shielding, which can have even less lumens. But I think they should have some shielding.
Well, then I would propose that we, as a condition, require the partial shielding for the lighting.
At least, or?
At least.
Can we change 7 to do so?
Oh, yeah, 7. Did we just modify 7 a little bit?
Just
Be in this partially shielded category?
I think I agree with Chair Smith, is that if we leave them the option of going partially or fully, depending on how much light they want, and that gives them the option, and that runs to the table.
Because fully shielded obviously makes the parking lot a lot brighter, but it's really directed downwards,
Right.
so it doesn't open the sky. So I'm fine with either of those myself. Denji, can you bring your little...
So this is the table from the code.
So I was contemplating either the 1,600 or the 7,800 options. That's what I was contemplating when I was first bringing that up.
And I would say leave them the option at
Right.
that point. If we give them both, that way they could decide, then they could use both fixtures,
Yeah.
depending on where the light was. That gives them the option. Either one I'm fine with.
At least, yeah. So out of potentially 4 options, that we're leaving them with 2 of the 4.
Do I need to amend my motion?
Please, would you?
Oh, okay. I would propose that, as a condition, we have either, give them the option of the fully shielded or the shielded, for lighting.
So Angie, I wrote in number 7, lighting, all site lighting shall meet the shielding and lumen standards table 16.43.070, comma, with either fully shielded or shielded lighting.
Perfect.
Period. Any other discussion about any of these items?
Yes, I'd like to address the wheel stop issue. Can anybody show me where there could be an incursion of the vehicles into a sidewalk area? I haven't seen any myself, per se.
You have vehicles parking along here, and along here, all along the sidewalk along here.
Okay, so the green area is the sidewalk then?
The sidewalk is here, the hatched area. This is sidewalk. So, the cars do put in.
So it's just along the building, it's not out on the adjacent areas on Sequoia or anywhere else, just along the building?
Right.
So if somebody's going to be inconvenienced, it's your own tenant or your own workers, or the customers.
Okay.
But with a 6'6" sidewalk, there's still sufficient, there's building code allowable, there's building code widths. We still meet the building code widths for the sidewalks with bumper overhang.
Okay?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
That's a good call. We usually don't worry about it if the sidewalk's 6 foot wide.
Anything else?
I did have one other thing. The gentleman from Pump Tech, you were voicing some kind of opinion on whether or not that driveway should be widened on your side of the building. Did you have an issue with that?
I just wanted to get more information about it. It was brought up when we had the Shimatsu expansion on the west side, and I spoke to Bill McCormick regarding the east side, just verbally. He came out and we chatted about it. And we discussed, what might happen in the future, and that was a couple of years ago. So I couldn't really remember exactly what was going to happen, but you can, from the aerial photo and from the plans there, you can hardly see our driveway, but it looks like it's only going to be widened by maybe 5 feet.
10.
And then, because there's that utility access that comes back. Okay, so right here. So basically, that curb is going to be removed.
Correct.
And this is our parking.
Jim, let me ask
That
you,
will be,
we are in Canby, so it's sort of okay, but why don't we come up here and show us the map?
As informal as it may be.
So the existing driveway is here, 30 feet, and we're proposing to widen it another 10. So a total width of 40.
right, the dotted line is an existing curb.
Okay.
So that is going to then be removed, is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
that's the proposal.
Does this pose an issue for you?
Whose expense is that?
It's our expense.
Is it at your-
We're going to
okay.
wire the driveway.
Okay.
at our
To me, it seems fine to me. It actually gives us better access in with trucks, and so I don't think that has I don't have any issues with that. I just want to make sure also that this would be intact too, because we have parking issues as well, so that doesn't look like that's getting altered at all. So basically, it's just going to widen our driveway access in by 5 feet.
But it widens it by 10 feet.
10 feet, okay.
Plus removes the angle for you.
Plus removes that angle, yeah, okay. Yeah, that's fine with me.
I just wanted to make sure you got to weigh in on it before.
No, I appreciate that,
Yeah,
yeah.
not a problem.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now, that raises the interesting question, is that Angie or Brian, do either of you know, or if you don't know, then I'll open it to the public. If that curvature there and the supposed construction work is being paid by this applicant, they would need some sort of an agreement. I mean, how do they you don't just go onto somebody else's property and start digging up concrete?
There is an easement that's been recorded that allows this for
Okay.
shared driveway
Okay.
between the two.
All right, if that makes sense, then, all right.
I mean, the code encourages the joint driveways. I don't think it requires,
So there's a joint easement there for any,
maybe in the future, if we
Industrial
see
park.
joint driveways, we need to make sure it's okay with the neighbor. I had assumed that they were,
yeah, I would assume that they've got that figured out too, but before they just can.
I think what happened was originally, when Trent built the properties, if I recall from the west side, it wasn't recorded in the deed what was the agreement about the shared driveways. I think it was just known because at the time, they owned all the property, and it was agreed with the city. But now that is, I mean, we're the only ones that own our piece of property on that whole strip, so I don't know that it actually is. It might be buried somewhere in that document.
Okay. Any other questions or discussion? Is there anybody that wants to bring any motions to the table?
I would move that we approve site and design review DR 1401 with the amendments of 15 that was brought forward by Angie, the change of 3 spaces versus 4. And the change of 17 to partially screened or fully screened per the lumen table 1643070. I think that's all the amendments that we had to it.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I second that.
Okay, any further discussion on that motion? Not hearing any discussion on that motion. All those in favor of approving DR 1401 as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed signify by saying nay. All were in favor. It is approved. Angie, have you been able to make the changes to the proposed final order that you had? Can we
Laney's
wait
noted
a few
them.
minutes? Okay.
Do we?
Yeah, we're not going to print them out, but, the first page of the prepared findings can be signed with, if you trust us to make those changes that you've discussed tonight.
Okay. So then let's bring the written decision back when it's all typed up. And you guys want, you can check.
Do you want to have us consider tonight written decision or wait 2 weeks?
Is there any,
Yeah, that was the question, is we could technically facilitate and speed this thing along towards pre-construction meeting and such, and building permit, if you're willing to accept that we got your corrections correctly and just type it up and send it out so the appeal period starts. Or we could wait 2 weeks if you want to see that.
or I could just pull this right out of my little piece of paper, stack of papers here and give it to you.
We do have the findings section in your packet. If you flip to the final findings.
Sure.
Okay.
Right, that's what I was thinking. You may have already taken notes on those. You have the language from your the first one on the, oh, that was the changing of 4 to 3, is that all it was?
Yeah, that was all it was, 4 to 3.
Okay, and which number was
And
that?
it had a reference to the table, 164370.
Where was that one?
The table was 164370.
Oh, for
That came
Yep.
from.
Oh, okay. It's right there.
So,
Okay.
your change to 7 was just what it was, except you added with either fully or shielded lighting.
We've got, here you go. That's what's,
Okay.
if you can print that on fancier paper, it's fine. Does that work?
Perfect.
Okay. Let's see, we do have, nope, that's approval of final decision in writing. That was just taken care of. Other items of interest from staff, or other reports from staff?
Since we actually do we usually take a separate vote for the written findings, so that when we record it on here, you made an oral decision to approve this, 5-0. Can you also make a formal motion on the findings,
Sure.
so that we can,
All those in favor of the findings as they were amended and written down and handed to staff by me, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All were in favor. Okay. So next, 2 weeks from now, we have a particularly busy 3 public hearing meeting. Is this, am I understanding correctly?
that's right.
So we need to make plans for breakfast
Yeah.
service, lady?
I prefer my eggs over easy.
Okay.
Bacon crisp.
Back to seriousness. Any other, what do you guys want to tell us about that in advance, or any other things in general?
Nothing.
I'll be doing the Dinsmore and code edits, and I think Brian's doing the
Emerald green.
green.
Okay.
Actually, it's Emerald Gardens.
Or- Yeah, I always call it Emerald Gardens, 'cause that's right. And then the next item we have under there is, we have application that was submitted a week ago for McDonald's rebuild, and we are absolutely swamped. And our goal would be to try to get that on Memorial Day, but that's a holiday. And so we're wondering if we could schedule a special planning commission meeting.
May
The
27th?
following Tuesday night. And of course, I forgot to check to see if this meeting room was available and open, Laney.
So which day?
May 27,
Actually,
Tuesday.
It's the 29th.
Is it?
Yeah.
That would be a Thursday.
Is it?
Yeah, 27th is Tuesday.